Hello, and welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I am your host, Wes Hilliard, and I am joined once again by William Gallagher. Despite, well, however he may feel about the American Revolution, he might be over it by now. Our sponsors this week are Notion and Fastmail. And if you're an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, you'll get an ad-free experience, plus our bonus segment this week, which, well, we're going to discuss a lot about Apple and how they're, I don't know, seemingly always behind, but also ahead on everything. It's kind of a conundrum. People seem to always be clamoring in the headlines of how Apple's this giant failure is going bankrupt any day. Doom and gloom, all about the Apple sphere. But at the same time, they seemingly get things right the first time, or at least maybe the second time. And we'll be discussing that and how Apple is covered. The magnificent, wonderful Apple reality distortion field, as it was. William, how are you doing today?
Honestly, confused, perplexed. Part of my mind is trying to work out, hang on, how old do you think I am that I remember the Revolution and Independence Day the first time round? And the second one is, we record this on July the 1st, excuse me, how British am I? The 4th of July. Yeah, that date doesn't have the same resonance here, but still you should remember it. We record on the 4th of July, that's why you said that, but for us, when the episode goes out on the 5th of July, the world could have changed in the UK. Today, as we record, it's an election day here, so by tomorrow, we could have an entirely new government, or exactly the same one again. It could go either way.
It's exciting for so many reasons, William, because tomorrow is also my birthday.
I did not know that. Happy birthday. That's great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I am getting much older. They've turned the notch ever so slightly on how much back pain I should have at any given moment. It's a lot of fun. 33, I have to think about it. But anyway, this week, there's nothing. No one's done anything. We can just go home. That's the podcast, everyone. Good night. I think it's been it has definitely. I wanted to discuss this because it's kind of a funny concept here. We used to have slow seasons. Do you remember that, William?
Yes.
Many
August,
years
September,
ago.
Yeah. The silly season, we used to call it in the UK, because you were so desperate for any news that dogs with headphones would be the front page. Yeah.
Yeah. People buying Apple Watches for their dog would be the news. I remember, so this is pre-Apple Insider for me. I didn't start working here till late 2019. But it's definitely used to be, you'd have WWDC, and then this just barren wasteland after mid-June until the end of September. Nothing would happen. And then Apple would announce iPhones, and then we'd get like event until about December. And then nothing would happen until March. And that's how it used to be. Now we might get a week off. And this is I think this might actually be the 1 week a year we actually maybe see almost nothing happening, which a little bit nicer for us. We get to catch up on some projects and stuff, but we do have things to discuss, as much as I joke. I did want to point out we have a Mark Gurman report confirming what we already knew. This is always fun coming from Gurman land. We knew this because it was mentioned pretty much immediately after the event in multiple interviews, including the talk show with John Gruber. Apple Intelligence will eventually come to Apple Vision Pro. You heard it here on this show, maybe first, if you don't listen to those other places. I brought it up on the very first show after WWDC. So no need to worry. We already knew this, but it's good to have it doubly confirmed anyway. I mean, it was obvious. It has an M-series chip. This is such a nascent platform. They have other things to worry about first. They have other systems to worry about first as far as Apple Intelligence goes. We're going to get there eventually.
I'm just thinking, back in the old silly season days, what you and I would now be doing is basically singing to fill some time. But now, you say nothing's going on, but I've realised, actually, this is also the time of the year when I think maybe people are too relaxed and they say things that perhaps they shouldn't. I struggle to pronounce his name, but isn't it Mustafa Suleyman? It's from Microsoft. Do you remember this thing he said this week about about artificial intelligence? Have you come across this story? Do you know what he went on about with this?
I did not see this.
All right. You might want to sit down then. Microsoft AI chief executive says it's just fine to take anything you like that's online. In fact, I can't remember the quote, but it's basically if you put it on the web, it is public domain.
I have seen the discourse around this concept. I did not know that this week's version originated from Microsoft's person.
I mean,
But
just
yes,
Microsoft.
I've seen people talking about this.
Small little company has no impact with anything. That was a thing that really threw me. I mean, I know this is going to sound ridiculously naive, and I know we're going to go off on a different topic here, but I feel like, yes, okay, there's Microsoft fundamentally misunderstanding things. And basically, it's fine to steal people's work, is what Microsoft says. So if you went into their offices and nicked the work they were on, I don't think they'd see it the same way. And also, I kind of felt let down this week by, do you know about Perplexity.ai as well?
Oh, that's a whole mess. Yeah.
I trusted Perplexity AI. It actually replaced Google for me. It's a search engine service, a search answer service, and it's doing this thing. It was basically an ethically sourced AI company, and it turns out to be doing some naughty things. And I found myself thinking, there's Microsoft. I mean, I have so often written about politicians making decisions about technology when they really don't understand it. And here's a technology person actually making decisions about the law without knowing for it. It's like everything is wrong and you can't trust anybody.
It's all upside down.
Yes.
Well,
rescue me.
This whole situation is very difficult because we've touched on it a little bit in past episodes, and we brushed past it in the Apple Intelligence episode, but we can get into it here because I think it's worth discussing. I don't know how to take a stance on this. Like, I've definitely made it clear before that you don't need an opinion on everything. That I know that's like against the laws of the internet where everyone has opinions on everything. I'm kind of in this middle road. On one hand, I can kind of see the argument of if it's published publicly on the internet, it's free game. I see why they would make that argument. Now, I don't agree with that argument, though, because it's like, I don't know, it's basically blatant plagiarism. It's you see, the way I see it is if you've ever paid attention to the movie industry or something, or TV industry, a lot of times, for whatever reason, because China doesn't allow a lot of media into their country, companies in China will just clone American movies almost identically. Or, Disney will do the same to other movies. Look up The Lion King and, oh gosh, I forget its name, but it's the Little Lion. I forget what Kimba or something like that, The Little Lion. Anyway, Disney pretty much just ripped off that movie, but that's fine. It happens.
Can we just throw in the word allegedly here a few times?
Sure, case. Allegedly, don't sue us, Disney. Okay. But it is a little eerie how close they are. And in any case, this happens a lot, and it's distasteful, and it's usually bad. I mean, whatever their clone is, it's usually bad and does bad. And we've also seen a lot of stuff happen in this case, but those were human made, right? We didn't have a robot going out and scraping this, and maybe you could say they were inspired by each other or something like that. But here we are doing even worse than that. This is no longer inspiration. It's just straight up, we're taking the information that we have, transforming it using other information into something hopefully unrecognizable, and then reproducing it, popping out something else on the other end. But if you look through the pieces, you can find things that are similar. One of the best examples I have is Pal World, this video game that blew up because it was basically pitched as Pokemon with guns. The problem is they generated all of their characters, and they pretty much all were Pokemon with different colors. That's it. Me as being someone who's so well versed in Pokemon, I'm one of those weirdos who can look at Pokemon and say what its name is. Like I've just been into it since I was like 9, so it's just been part of my life. And then here's this game that just obviously rips off like Pokemon. The front cover yellow guy, that's basically an Electivire, right? Like, it's just a Pokemon. And they're like, oh, but they're all original and they're made with AI and there are designs. And it's like, no, like, Nintendo should be suing the pants off of you right now, and I believe they are. And that's where we are today, not just with art, not just with video games, but with everything. Writing on the internet. Yeah. You know, this is no longer the issue of having 50 monkeys on a keyboard typing out Shakespeare. This is 50 AI computers typing out Shakespeare. They're going to accidentally plagiarize someone once every 5 seconds, right? It's just happening. And I'm not sure. Well, first of all, we weren't prepared for it. The internet wasn't prepared for it. The way we structure information wasn't prepared for it. So everyone's retroactively now blocking these bots, aggressively designing scripts, going behind paywalls, doing everything they can, but it's too late. The cat's out of the bag. The models are trained, including Apple's, which used Applebot to scrape the web. So the public web, anyway, they claim that they avoided copyrighted and personal work. So that maybe they have a leg up, but they still went after the open web without anyone really knowing what they were doing. So the question is, William, especially from your, Writers Guild seat, how do you feel about this? And is there anything we can do? Or maybe we just need to lay down the rules in this new world? What's going on here?
I think in a way we have some experience in this, because if you, smaller example, if you go on the App Store and search for something, even when you search for exactly the right name of it, the odds are you're going to get 5 clones or something first before you see the one you want. And I think we've become used to being annoyed by it, but looking through for the one. We've been trained to be critical thinkers about it. We've been trained to be suspicious of things. It's like there's a tool set for fighting it. It's not a thing that can help it, but we do have some help. I mean, the Biden administration's introducing things, countries around the world are, the EU is. I was going to say a smaller example, but actually it's huge. Part of the Writers Guild of America strike that we had before did concern AI and WGA. I mean, good on them. I'm deputy chair of the Writers Guild of Great Britain, so it's affiliated, but not the same thing. WGA did some great work in protecting writers from some. Well, I think I've told you this one before, but it's one. It keeps coming back to me that there is an argument. I'm not going to say there is any specific studio that actually did this, but there is an argument that you could make a film script by telling AI to give me a script of 120 pages about
Terrible.
3 characters called Bert. Okay, but knowing it would be terrible, knowing you would never film it, and instead, once it was done, giving it to an actual writer and telling them to make it work. And of course, the writer of words, that's what we do. But there's more than this. That changes everything. That piece is now an adapted piece of work, not an original. And the pay scale is totally different. So it would purely be a way of lying to the writers, getting money out of them. Yeah.
And you would know as a writer, William, that one of the hardest things to do as an editor is editing someone else's work, especially if your job is, hey, take this garbage someone else wrote and make it into something workable. 9 times out of 10, I would rather just start over. Because the work that you put into editing something and rearranging and like the mental processes are so different, but also probably more intensive that you're probably better off starting over and just saying that you reworked it in the first place. And I feel that way about AI in a lot of ways.
I actually like editing, but sorry to interrupt you, but I have an example that I think backs you up. I worked at a radio station, a BBC local radio station in the Midlands. For Christmas, they were a bit like us. They were trying to find things to do when, in their case, there wasn't much news on, and they wanted to run a documentary series that the national station, BBC Radio 4, ran. But local radio didn't like running half-hour shows on anything at the time. They thought people weren't going to stick around. So they wanted to do it in 15-minute chunks. And they were not physically able to cut those 30-minute episodes down into 15 because they were so well made in the original form that you couldn't prize them apart. And I remember in the meeting, there were a lot of people really complaining about how well edited these things were. And I'm going, good on Radio 4. They made a great show. Sorry, it's a problem for other people. But, editing, I think, is...
it's its own
I've always been improved by editors, face it. So I'm pro-editing, but not maybe as much in the way you mean, more like a second pair of eyes on things than somebody actually.
Right. No, I'm talking about rewrites. Yeah, editing. Yeah. Editing is a different task of taking something and checking it for work and order and making sure it reads well. That's different because you're not really changing the structure. I'm talking about taking something that was bad and restructuring it and rewriting it, but using it as a base. Like you're starting with the foundation already in place rather than just starting from scratch, which I prefer to do. But anyway, I want to posit a question and then we can move on because I've had a lot of time to think about this. I've been reading what other people say, and I think there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this because I think, like I said, the cat's out of the bag. Not only has this already been done, the model's already trained, the internet's already been scraped. We can't undo that. So how do we use this data responsibly? And this is where we turn to Apple. I honestly believe right now this could change next week when they announce a new AI feature that they haven't announced yet, and it's just terrible for humanity or whatever. Hopefully Apple has enough responsibility not to do something like that. But right now I think what they've announced is fair, safe, and useful. And so let's look at the history of AI companies so far. You look at image generators like DALL-E and the ones from GPT-4 and whatnot. Those guys constantly show copyrighted material. If you ask it to make Mickey Mouse, it'll just usually make Mickey Mouse, right? Or if you make enough realistic images, you'll eventually find Getty Images watermarks in the image because they're just straight up pulling from that.
Wow.
But and then the writing text, you'll just find paragraphs from books, right, or articles. If you summarize an article, or if you ask it to give you information like the Arc browser ruining the internet, if you ask it for information about iPhone 16, there'll be stuff from AppleInsider in there without it citing us, and it'll just be blatant paragraphs taken from our website, right? Those are bad uses of AI and the data sets they have. I think those are basically plagiarism, and you're taking away credit from the artists. It's just bad uses. Now let's look at what Apple's doing. First of all, you cannot generate text from scratch, period. You cannot generate images from scratch. You do have a prompt line, but the prompt is controlled inside of the image playground. It is not. I haven't used the app yet, so maybe I'm wrong, but from what I've seen is you get to give it a starting point and 3 points of interest, and it goes on its way, right? It's very controlled. It's not an empty text box where you say, where you can put in 3,000 words of description of what you want, and it pops out a Lord of the Rings Renaissance painting, right? Like that's not what's happening here. So I think Apple's approach is the best way to do this, because let's just make the assumption that the only way to actually train an AI, the only way to make an LLM is by scraping the internet. Let's just go ahead and say that's all we can do. So Apple has done that, right? Let's just say that's morally ambiguous is the scraping part. What isn't ambiguous is the stealing part and reproducing people's work, but Apple is not doing that. Now, what do you think about that distinction? Is that fair to say?
I think Apple is saying all the right things, using all the right words, and at the moment, it seems to me that they are clearly in the lead ethically, but we just don't know until it comes. Like I would have said much the same about Perplexity, and I actually feel personally let down by them on this. It'll be worse if Apple turns out to be.
Let's look at Perplexity real quick, because they are this AI search engine that claims who want to replace Google, and what they were doing is scraping the web and creating a database that could be searched. But problem is, they were going about it the worst way possible, because on the front they said, here's our bot, this is the name of our bot, this is how you disable our bot. And then they had a secret bot that nobody knew about that was also scraping the web behind it and doing more and on a wider variety of topics, and nobody knew it was happening and nobody could block it. Their robot.txt file couldn't tell it to do anything because it was basically ignoring all of that. And then they were using all of their data, including the secretly stolen data, to run Perplexity. And that is just gross. They overstepped a lot of bounds. Honestly, they should probably be sued out of existence because of it. I don't know who would sue them, though, because we don't have any legislation protecting us from this. We need something to protect us from this, and hopefully we do get some
There is
soon.
actually one thing. I don't know how it's going to play out, but Perplexity used AWS, Amazon Web Service, and apparently what they've done is in contravention of the terms of the contract. So it's not that they can be sued, but I presume that means Amazon can just switch them off.
Yeah, they could be black holed into nothing, basically, by not being allowed anywhere. That's what we've done to some social networks and some bad actors, like trying to find homes for Nazis and stuff. They just eventually run out of places to go because they have nowhere to host their website on the internet.
Is that what happened to Ping, an Apple thing, or was it just rubbish?
I don't think it was the Nazis. I think it was just actually not very good.
Oh,
but
poor
we should move on from this. But I just want to finish my thought on Apple on this. This is why it's hard to take a position on this, because being a writer on Apple Insider, I don't like how this has gone about, but it is interesting how it's unfolding. This is the next phase of how the internet works. I don't think we can get away from this. This isn't those silly, what were they called, images you could buy.
NFTs.
NFTs. This isn't any of that. This isn't crypto nonsense. This is a real implementation of a real technology that's going to be sticking around. And like I said, let's make the assumption that you have to crawl the internet to make this stuff work. You need the wealth of world knowledge in order to actually make these LLMs work. But looking at how Apple has implemented it, again, so far as of this episode, this could change next week, but Apple, I think, has done this responsibly. They've taken the world's knowledge, but they're not plagiarizing it. They're not turning it into something ugly and dirty. Now, I will agree that some of the image generation stuff Apple's doing is kind of weird. I don't like their presentation on the superhero thing or whatever. Like, they were kind of ugly images, but it was clearly an original image. That wasn't a, Pixar movie, right? They didn't have half of Mike Wazowski in the background by accident, right? Which we've also seen in some of these other generations. But I think what's interesting about Apple's approach is they're doing it in such an Apple way. It's private, it's secure, it seems to be as ethical as it possibly can be given the situation. Like, let's just pretend like there's no way around it. They had to scrape the internet. They had to. All right, I understand that makes a lot of people upset, but the cat is out of the bag. We got to move on from that. What do they do with that information, I think, is what's more important. The scraping's already been done. Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, these companies have proven they don't care what happens to that data as long as they're doing whatever the people want, generating whatever the people want. Apple has drawn a line. They're not doing the same thing in the same way. And I think that is the important distinction here. And even if we get legislation, this is kind of like the right to repair laws that we've seen. Apple's already playing in a place where they're going to welcome legislation because they're playing in the safe space here. Even if legislation arrived, it's going to affect Google and OpenAI and Perplexity and these other companies. Apple, I think, has already carved themselves out a niche that won't have them in trouble. And for that, I applaud Apple, because they could have gone the other way. They could have gone the Google way and just dumped text generators and image generators and chatbots into our lap and said, here, this is what you wanted, right? But they didn't do that. And maybe you'll hear more of this discussion in the Apple Insider Plus segment, because this gets into is Apple behind and are they ahead? Because on this topic, I think we can look at Apple and say they are ahead on AI, because they are ahead in the morality of it, and they also haven't shipped a failed piece of hardware like these other 50 companies have, and they're not in the same position as something like, what was their most recent terrible, sad thing? Adobe Video, Firefly or whatever. Yeah, narrow it down. Okay, yes. This episode is brought to you by Notion. It's an app and a service that you write in. You save notes to it, you have documents, you organise your work. It's an everything bucket, if you remember that term. Everything buckets used to be for one person, though, just for you or just for me and whatever we happen to be doing right now.
Notion, though, is an everything bucket for everyone. You can work with your entire team in Notion. But as good as that is, let's focus on you. Because whatever your work is, it's going to involve writing documents. We all do that. There's probably at least some research. You're certainly likely to be making notes. Surely there's going to be some list somewhere of requirements of what you need to do. And you know where this is going. Actually, it's all going into Notion. Keep the notes in Notion. Add the research into Notion. Write your final document and do it all of it in Notion. Just to say, actually, that thing about research, by the way, because I like this so much, there is a Notion web clipper. Originally, it was only on Chrome, but now it's also on Safari, which is the browser I use. When you see an article online that you want to read, any article at all, and you really want to read it, but you're supposed to be doing all of this work, well, then just click, save the article to Notion, and you can read it later whenever you like. I think that feature alone kind of blurs the line between work and fun. And I know actually that it contributes to making Notion one single place, one single destination for you to do everything, to read everything, to work on everything. But don't take my word for it. Just try it out for yourself. In fact, try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/AppleInsider. That's all lowercase letters, by the way, notion.com/AppleInsider, and you start turning ideas and thoughts into action. Also, when you use our link, you're supporting our show. Notion.com/AppleInsider. And thank you to Notion for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. Be clear though, Apple hasn't shipped anything yet. So
yes, we need to see how it works in person. But what we've been promised is the good version of this. Yeah. We'll see what it looks like in a few weeks when we actually get it in our hands. But let's move on. Okay.
Yep.
So we got a few rumors to round up this week. Nothing too crazy. Surprise, surprise, William. I think iOS 18 is old news. We're yes. over that now. I mean, we've got it. We got the betas. Who cares, right? Because so iOS 19 is in the works.
Yeah, I would have imagined iOS 20 is more than a line somewhere as well. But am I just
iOS 25 is on a chalkboard somewhere in Apple Park?
Probably yes. Alongside the iPhone 20, they're planning that already.
This is where silly season comes in, right? This is we found a snippet of code that suggests this exists, and it's just like, of course it does. We've discussed this before. Some rumors are just confirmation of things we already assumed or already just knew. There's a new iPhone coming. There's a new iOS coming.
No.
All we know is that
there's a new iPhone. When?
Oh, of course.
Okay, and what will they call it?
They just randomly, Tim Cook wakes up one morning, rolls some dice, shakes a magic 8-ball, and it's like, today's iPhone day, and just releases it on April 23rd.
Well, actually, I got to tell you, every time I'm driving and I'm playing my favourites list on Apple Music, I am slightly hesitant. I get to a song that I do like, and I think, I don't like it today. I don't want to skip it, because I picture Tim Cook in Apple Park going, oh, he doesn't like it as much. We won't play that one again. That's what he does all day. None of the rest of this stuff. So, all right, you're just looking at me now. Okay. I genuinely wonder every time I do. I'll be quiet. So, okay.
So, do we want to make predictions for macOS 16? What it's going to be called? Are we going with Death Valley this time? What's going on?
Oh, that'd be good, wouldn't it? I'm rattling through place names in California, which is actually I'll go for somewhere I like macOS Santa Monica. Okay, I like it there. I met some of my writing heroes there once. It's a very special place for me. But
will we ever see macOS Cupertino?
Oh, that's a bit meta. I quite like that.
Yeah. That feels a little spooky, kind of like that would be like the last macOS or something. They're like, we're done. Yeah.
I want that scary. Now. I've thought before I would love it if they named it after me. macOS William, because then you could get up in the morning and say, bugs found in macOS William. macOS William crashes and stuff like that. I could see potential. Yeah.
Well, so far, all of the names, correct me if I'm wrong, have been locales, right?
That's true. Yes,
parks and mountains and valleys. I wonder if we'll ever see
yeah.
cities. What if we shift to naming macOS after like cities in California? That would be interesting.
There must be quite a few of them, so that could keep
They've got
us
a
going
couple
for a while.
One or two are very popular.
I've heard that. Okay, but still, I wonder, actually, is there a rights issue? 'Cause I don't I have this memory that we
macOS
thought...
Hollywood.
Okay, that's an image. macOS Monterey, I think... I don't think any of them have been leaked very definitely in advance, but Monterey was one where it was thought it was a possibility, because I think the county, Monterey, said something or something like that. Would the city have to have permission given for this?
Well, I want to ask this one last thing, and we can jump to the next one. But this is a fun fact, William. You read a lot of scripts. You're a film buff from at least that point of view. Did you know that in order to have the Hollywood sign appear in a piece of media, you have to pay a tax? It's a very hefty tax.
I didn't, but did you know that if you go by Apple Maps or Google Maps to find the Hollywood sign, it doesn't take you there?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
is there a reason?
Yes, because the local residents hated people driving through their roads, so I don't know how they managed to do it, but it takes you to a vantage point.
Right.
Quite shockingly far away. But yes, it was the local populace who did it.
I think it's a state park. Well, it's not a state park, I think. It's like a government-owned piece of land, and it's barred from trespassing. So all those movies where you see people literally sitting like on the Hollywood sign, they're trespassing. And that's usually a stage set. They don't normally film there anymore because it's a precious thing, and if anyone accidentally tripped and kicked a hole through it or something, it'd be in a lot of trouble.
Actually, the letters
Hollywood's
still
fake. Did you know that? There's CGI and everything. I'm just joking.
I've suddenly realised, do they maintain those letters? Because it used to be Hollywood Land, and obviously the last four just fell off, I thought. Yeah, maybe it's all deteriorating, and we need filmmakers to go up there with a paintbrush to make it look right.
I do want to challenge everyone who's listening if you knew it was Hollywood Land or not before. It was like the 1950s when it changed. But William was here for the revolution, so he must have seen them take the land down as well.
Right. I was having a lovely time, and then this comes up. Just now that you're 33, it's time to
I have perspective
quit with
on
the
the
old
world.
jokes. Yes.
Yeah. No. So anyway, moving on. iPhone 16. You think they'll sell at least 3 or 4, William?
I think there's a chance that 1 or 2 will go out the door, just to a few people who collect these things. That's probably what it's going to be. It's going to be a niche iPhone. Yeah.
Of course, this is going to be a big one because Apple Intelligence. This is, of course, we're going to get into. It hasn't appeared much in my timelines or anything, but I guarantee you it will start appearing once Apple announces these phones, because everyone's going to claim Apple artificially limited Apple Intelligence to force people to buy new iPhones. Oh, no. Yeah. The usual nonsense. I do believe, what I always forget the phrase. What is the phrase of intentionally making devices worse to force people to buy?
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, exactly.
Enforced obsolescence. Something. That isn't it, but it's along those lines, isn't it?
Yeah, obsolescence.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a word we are both failing to remember right now. Planned obsolescence. Anyway,
there you go. Right.
Yeah, that's really dumb. Don't I mean, you can at me if you want to, but I'm going to tell you you're wrong. It doesn't exist. It's just not a good business tactic. It actually does not work in practice. Believe it or not, you can't force people to buy the new thing by making the old one worse. It just does not work. They'll buy something else instead.
I thought that was the Android model. Make it so bad that you buy another one to replace it.
That still doesn't make sense. I mean, Android's so bad, so people move to iPhone. That's why if you ever look at there's like a life cycle of the smartphone, and the arrow going from Android to iPhone is 10 times bigger than the arrow going from iPhone to Android. And that's been that way for a decade.
You don't think Apple secretly owns Android?
Oh, no.
And is trying to get... Oh, it all makes... That's
we're
why...
inventing new conspiracies.
Senator Warren said Apple had a monopoly, and I'm thinking, but it's only 51%. I mean, but she knew.
They're operating
Yes.
from a shadow lab on the other side of the flat Earth.
Oh,
the
my
Great
lights.
Ice Wall
Yes.
is protecting them.
Yes,
And we've lost 20 of our listeners just now. So the iPhone
but gained
16,
a few probably. So okay,
Probably.
right. Yes.
The iPhone 16, we've got a couple of rumors suggesting that they're going to sell like gangbusters based on chip orders. They're expecting as many as 100 million. That's in line with the year. What was that? The iPhone 6, where they introduced a bigger phone. It's called a super cycle. Ever since the first super cycle, we've been hearing about super cycles every year since. Everyone's been like, oh, this is the one. This is the super cycle. Well, if there was ever going to be one, William, I believe it's because of artificial intelligence. And every iPhone 16 will be able to run it. Go ahead.
You don't think that 5G introduced at least a bit of a super cycle?
It was a super mini cycle. Mini super cycle.
We need gradations of cycles here.
It did
That's what we
better.
do, yeah.
5G did. There was a hump, but it wasn't as big as a hump as the iPhone 6.
Right.
Of course, we don't know Apple's actual model sales, so nobody knows.
I was going to say, do you plan to buy the iPhone 16? But you buy every year, don't you? It's
I'm on the upgrade plan where I get.
Oh, there you are. Right.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm paying basically a lease to just get a new iPhone every year.
I skipped the 14 and I was glad. I have a feeling I might go for the 16. Just based on things like the little things like you hear, like the screen will be slightly bigger. I'm very torn between the Pro and the Pro Max size. But so if it's the Pro one is just slightly bigger, might be the answer for me.
Well, speaking of new devices, I hope this one's wrong because I don't like that this is happening so quickly, being someone who just bought an M4 iPad Pro. But there are new iPads appearing in the just various places in the databases people monitor. And it appears that we have a couple of base model iPads, an iPad mini, and possibly signs of an iPad Pro with M5.
M5?
Yes. I don't believe this. I'm going to go ahead and just say no. Question mark. These iPads obviously are could be a long way away. Maybe they're just placeholders for the identifiers, because that's how you tell what chip is in it. The identifier moves up a number to indicate the new chip. So sure, this could be the M5 iPad Pro. Fine, but they got to be 2 years away. It wouldn't be until the bare minimum the end of next year, if not the beginning of 2026, is my guess. So you mark it in your calendars now, but iPad mini with A17, I'm here for that. Give me new iPad minis. I wish it was an M chip. It would be cool to have Apple Intelligence on that device, but I'm fine with it just getting an upgrade because mine's getting a little dusty.
So you think that the M5 one will be at least end of next year? Does that mean you think the other stuff like the base models and the mini will be sooner?
All we have are the identifiers. We don't have dates. They just say these exist, and this is another one of those rumors that's like, of course they do. It's like, but in any case, yes, I believe we're going to get a new iPad this fall. Of course, the iPad base model. With the possible A16 processor, then the iPad mini with A17. I would still
actually, you
prefer
say
M1.
we're definitely going to get it, but there was no iPad at all of any description last year. So maybe we should count ourselves lucky to have had the ones we have this far.
Well, we're definitely getting iPads this year because this is the year that we're getting basically all the iPads updated. We already have Pro and Air updated, so all that leaves is the mini and base model. Those basically have to be this fall. Like, it's happening. So go ahead and prepare your wallets.
It just popped into my head to ask you, do you think that the regular iPad will be made into a larger version as well? And I was one pixel away from saying, and what about the iPad mini? Will they make that a large one? A large
no,
iPad
make it even
mini?
smaller.
Yeah.
Make a 6-inch iPad mini. It is a different screen aspect ratio, so it doesn't matter how close it gets to iPhone, it'll still be a square. Or a rectangle, I suppose, just a wider one. But the iPad base, no, it doesn't make sense. It's already, if you want a bigger iPad base model, get an iPad Air. That's the point. The lineup is already laddered all the way out. There's no, like, what would that even be? A $400 10-inch iPad? I don't know. Because it's currently a 10-inch iPad, isn't it? So it'd have to be a 12-inch. It just doesn't make sense. If you want a bigger an iPad, get the iPad Air. It's already priced to fit the lineup. It makes sense. Even though I think the bigger iPad Air is double the price of the base iPad, so maybe there's something to it, but I doubt it. I think Apple's strategy with that device is lowest, cheapest possible configuration, and that's what they're going for.
That makes sense. And good that they do. The base iPad is great.
Now, the new iPad all of them are going to be compatible with the Apple Pencil Pro, I believe. That's going to be true.
That would be good. I have an iPad Pencil because I found one. I would not have bought one otherwise because handwriting is so bad it wouldn't imagine it'd be any use at all. But having got one by accident, I find I really like it. And my only frustration is that I knew if I did buy a new iPad, I would have to now buy a new iPad Apple Pencil. So the fact that at least in future, one pencil, one iPad keeps working is, I think, better than 4 versions, and some of them work here and some of them don't. And some of them you can make work on the ones they shouldn't, and most of them you can't. The pencil is great and confusing at the same time. There, I've said it. Yes. Okay. This episode is brought to you by Fastmail. You've already got email. Well, I love email. Love is not too strong a word for it at all. The odds are that, in fact, you have just too much email. You have so much of it that sometimes you just pause, you hesitate just a tiny moment before opening your inbox, wondering, can you possibly put this off for just a little bit longer? Yeah, no, you can't. But what you can do is use Fastmail. And one clue for the reason why is right there in the name. The purpose of Fastmail is to be quick. That's quick as in, for example, helping you see through the mass of emails to the ones that you want and to the ones that really matter. Or actually, to the ones that really matter to you. So an email you've got in your inbox, it probably is actually vital to the person who sent it to you, but you've got your deadlines, you've got your pressures. Often the only sensible thing to do is to ignore emails and get your work done, which is fine, except we're not sensible, are we? Even just knowing that an email like this is there in the inbox, even without reading it to see what are they asking me for now, emails sent by certain people to us about certain topics maybe, that kind of live in our heads as we work. You have seen this. You've sometimes decided, it's just easier, I'll deal with the email, rather than try to carry on working and trying to forget about this message when you saw it pop up. Okay, but even when that works, even when you just bat back a reply to someone and that's it, you're done, it's dealt with. No, it isn't, because they reply. They email back immediately. Now, sometimes that's just tough. You've got no choice but to respond and to respond all the time. But most of the time, you can just tell Fastmail to deal with this. Click on one of these emails and just get Fastmail to snooze it for you. Snoozing, this is actually going to sound a bit feeble until you've used it, but snoozing, I suppose, really just means hiding. But hiding for a certain amount of time. And after the next hour or however long you decide, that email comes back. It goes away from your inbox, it vanishes, and then it comes back as if it's just arrived. So yeah, it hasn't really gone. You know it's there, but it's not in the inbox. So you are not seeing it every single time you open mail to send you sending an email to someone else. Funny thing is, Apple added this feature to Apple Mail a couple of years ago now, but it's like, did they not read to the end of the sentence? Because Apple Mail snoozing just leaves the email right there in your face, pressing away at your mind, whereas Fastmail removes it from your sight, bringing it back when you need it, when you can do something with it. That's the thing there about Fastmail. It's not a collection of, well, it is a collection of features. Actually, there are so many features, but what it really is the result of people who use email making an email app. The things that bother you about email, the things that slow you down and me down on email all the time, well, they affect the makers of Fastmail too, so they've worked on them. The things, there are so many features You need to try this out for yourself. So actually do this. Go make email better for you with Fastmail. Try Fastmail free for 30 days and then get 10% off your first year at fastmail.com/AppleInsider. That's Fastmail, fast as in really quick, I suppose, FAST. Mail as in, I can only think of email, mail.com/AppleInsider, as in Apple Insider. And thanks very much to Fastmail for supporting the Apple Insider podcast.
So, speaking of products and devices and Apple Intelligence and everything, I want to get into a little topic here that's been tickling the back of my mind. I think it's kind of interesting. I want to hear your thoughts. The HomePod. It's not obsolete. It's what's the other one? Vintage.
Is what they say.
It is a vintage product. Now, for those who don't know, Apple has two designators it applies to products. They are arbitrary. Not arbitrary, I suppose, because they're specifically applied at a certain date range. After 6 to 7 years, a device of being on the market, a device becomes vintage. All that means is it's being end-of-lifed, and support for that product is going to be minimal, if none. Once it reaches 8 to 10 years, it is now obsolete. You're not going to get any support. It's just the parts aren't being made for it anymore. It's just gone. If I got those date ranges right, it's somewhere in there. But the thing is it's kind of a just automatic designation. It's not Apple making any kind of declaration about the product not working anymore. There are plenty of vintage products that still get updates, like the HomePod. So I did see a lot of people talking about how, well, what do I do with my HomePods? It's like, well, keep using them. Have they
Yes.
broken yet? Because I have four obsolete products in my house operating right now on my network, playing music, and it's great.
I have two, but they are still not back in my office after the great disassembly of the office. To be clear, actually, one thing about the dates, it's that many years from when they last get made or last go on sale.
Oh, right.
So it's actually even longer from when they first come out. Really. So it's not like Apple tries to...
Because the HomePod's approaching 8 years on the market, and then it went... It was
amazing, yeah.
It was 2 years for sale, and then it kind of they killed it, and it got discontinued in 2020? Question mark.
I want to say something like that. It was when it was 17. It was announced. 18. It was really available, and then so 2 years would put it in 20. Yeah, and then
it kind of just, well, we're done. And then a year later, they came out with another one, and now here we are. These will eventually die. Don't get me wrong. They are going to eventually. They're going to eventually stop working. That's fine. I honestly believe if today they all turned off, I would be a little upset, but I got my money's worth. I've spent so many hundreds of hours listening to audio from these devices, and they've been as pristine as the day they were bought. Amazing audio. They just work. The new ones are better. So, yes, if these 4 HomePods eventually just become obsoleted in a way that they are not getting any more updates, they're going to be bad for my network. If I have them connected, my HomeKit's going to lose its mind or something. I'll unplug them, turn them into statues. I don't know. But, and then I'll go and replace them and find a bargain bin with some, hopefully discounted, HomePod bundles somewhere, or, maybe the used market will be friendly to me. But, there are a couple things here, that I wanted to bring up. So first of all, I like the HomePod. How have you felt about this product? Because this has been such an odd product in Apple's lineup. It doom and gloom from the beginning, worthless because it doesn't have optical or an aux cable, or terrible because it couldn't integrate with Spotify, and now it can, but Spotify refuses to, and people seem to have forgotten all about it because now it's no longer on, the onus is no longer on Apple, so they don't care anymore. And you know, this utter failure. Nobody bought any. They're sitting on store shelves at Best Buy, even though technically they were sold out for the first year. What's going on? What is this product? What do you think Apple thinks of this product, and how do you feel?
I can answer you how I feel. So I sometimes wonder why I bought them, because I tend to listen to music more over headphones.
Fair.
It took a long time before I bought a second HomePod, but the one on its own in my office I thought was really loud and very clear, and I liked it, but I was conscious of neighbours. My neighbours have recently started learning to play musical instruments, so it's like they're getting their own back on me. And then I did get the second one, and this was two of them. New or old, as long as it's the same generation of it, that they make a stereo. I haven't found it to be as clear a difference. And in this office, with my things, one of them keeps losing the connection or something. Something isn't right somewhere. So I feel like it's sometimes a bit of a faff getting them going.
And you don't have the new HomePods, correct?
No, I have two of the original. One of them bought new around the time they came out, and one of them secondhand about the time it was first cancelled. And things, one black, one white, or grey, or whatever it was called. And
you have AirPods Max, correct?
No, AirPods Pro, first generation AirPods Pro.
Well, so I will say, it's such a stunning effect when it works and when you're in the right soundscape. I'm not sure that your office is what you'd say is the right soundscape where you can get the right distance away. But if you sit and if you put the two speakers up, and now every speaker has a sweet spot, and Apple tried to programmatically create a wider sweet spot for the HomePods, and they did a pretty good job. But there is still a sweet spot for the HomePods, and that is dead center, about 5 feet away, facing the HomePods with them, with the HomePods themselves about 5 feet apart, maybe 6 feet. Any further than that, and they start becoming distinct channels. What you want is them to be spaced so they sound like they're a single speaker. And they do the craziest magic trick, William, when you set these up correctly. And that's the center channel is in front of you. Even though you have two separate HomePods on the left and right side of you, the center channel where all the music's coming from, the vocals and the, lead guitarist and parts of the drum sets, is directly in front of you where there is no speaker. It is pure absolute magic. I know other speakers are capable of doing this. I've heard other good sound systems. It's just from these two speakers, the size that they are, what they are, can create the sound stage of a much bigger, much more expensive sound system. And that is the magic of HomePod. And I've very much enjoyed mine, and will absolutely be replacing mine when they decide to go away. But I don't know. I think.
So, have you tried HomePod Mini? Do you? Because I've got a couple of those in the house, and I think they're nice.
So there are two HomePods two old HomePods in my office, two old HomePods in the den downstairs, two new HomePods in the living room, and then I have a HomePod Mini in my bedroom, in my girlfriend's bedroom, in the kitchen, in the dining room, and in the bathroom.
So you're all in on HomePod, really? That's the impression I'm getting. Right. Okay.
I explained it on a previous show, but just to reiterate, we used to have Sonos, and it would serve a similar function of being the whole home audio. I saw smoke, where it's slowly becoming fire, of Sonos just going a bad direction back when they joined up with Amazon. And now, okay, don't get me wrong, Sonos still makes amazing products with amazing sound. They still have a good networking system. Their app has always been garbage, but when they started getting snuggling up with Amazon, and it was clear the partnership with Apple was never going to really happen, that like people hoped. And when they promised 7.1 surround sound audio for 5 years, now a decade, and it just never came, I started just getting this funny feeling of, they're no longer doing this in a way that feels like it's for the sake of the user, and it's becoming more and more for the sake of the company. And a lot of companies do have to make that shift. It just didn't seem like Sonos needed to, because their hardware was already so expensive that they didn't need to chase this weird race to the bottom like other companies did. But ever so slowly, Sonos has been creeping in that direction, and it's becoming more and more apparent that they're getting to that race. And I'm willing to bet we're less than 5 years away from Sonos releasing a budget line. You know what I mean? And that just is so not them. And the the problems they've had recently and their app changes and stuff, I keep looking on as a former Sonos user, just saying, I'm glad I got out when I did, because it's such an investment. I probably had, several grand worth of Sonos stuff around my home and sold it off before it got any bigger, knowing that if I got any bigger, I would never get out from under it. And I've went all in on Apple, and I've never looked back. My main living room home theater setup with a large TV and PlayStation and everything runs through HomePods, and I love it. It's amazing.
Actually, that's one thing I even when I had a second HomePod, I did move one to the living room because I was going to say this won't make any sense to you, but you will know it. Around September every year, it's September in the UK because Strictly Come Dancing is on. The original of what you will know as Dancing with the Stars. And there's a great band, there's some good music on it. So put that next to your TV set and it's a really good experience. And I didn't get that from my TV set, but I did get it from the HomePod. I should move it back. We're already getting the news of Strictly coming back, so I should prepare myself. Thank you. Okay, I'll do that.
Well, so I have one last question about HomePod. So there has been a discussion. I don't know if you're aware of this discussion. Apple Intelligence is not coming to the HomePod. And, it's part of the list of things it's not coming to. So we know Apple Intelligence isn't coming to the Apple Watch, the Apple TV, or the HomePod. Nor really AirPods for that matter. So is that the end of life? Is this the death of this product? Is Siri forever doomed to be this dumb, useless creature stuck in a home that it never asked for, that Apple built and never bothered supporting properly? Like what the discourse around this I just find so amusing. William, what is your take on Apple Intelligence not being on HomePod?
Well, until you said that about Siri, I was thinking, shrug. Really? What in the world would I use Apple Intelligence for on my HomePod? But yes,
that's recently, the right answer.
I was
Congratulations, you won the car.
I asked my HomePod, I asked Siri really, to play the podcast 99% Invisible, and it went off and played, well, it wasn't 99 Luftballons, I would have kept with that. It was like something like 9.5 weeks soundtrack, track 4, or something. So totally wrong for it. So maybe I would like a bit more intelligence in Siri for that, but otherwise, I'm
that's
okay
an
with
issue with language parsing, which Apple and Siri has always run into. So going back to the talk show, because it was such an excellent bit with those executives, we never get to hear from them, but John, G, and Andrea actually pointed out, we don't like this either. When those edge cases come up more and more because of just how humans speak, and Siri can't figure out what to do with it, and it just throws out garbage. They don't like that. And part of what's going to be fixed by that is not necessarily Apple Intelligence, just how they approach language understanding. So part of what was revealed at WWDC is, of course, Apple Intelligence, and part of it was how it's going to improve Siri and how you could say, oh, I meant this mid-sentence, and it would correct, and it would understand all of that. We don't know what part of Siri is coming to what devices. We know Apple Intelligence isn't coming, and I want to make this distinction here on the show. So, Apple Intelligence on iPhone, iPad, and Mac is a series of on-device models that can call out to a private cloud compute model that does things like writing tools, image generation, and summarization, text, like that kind of stuff. None of those features you can't summarize a website on the HomePod. You can't edit your grammar on a HomePod, right? You can't generate an image, right? Unless I guess someone wants to call out to the HomePod and have the image generate on their phone. I don't know, but the technology we have today for Apple Intelligence just does not translate to the HomePod. Now, so what people are actually mourning is, oh, we're not going to get the better Siri on HomePod. No one ever said that. That has not been part of the discourse. Apple hasn't said that. Now, we don't know what form. The question is, if the Siri is better on iPhones and iPads and Macs, does that mean we're going to have Siri segmentation? Does that mean some devices are going to have dumb Siri and some devices are going to have smart Siri? I don't think so. You have to remember, Siri is mostly cloud compute. It finally did it. my Apple Vision Pro is listening to me. Anyway, it's all cloud compute. Now, yes, there don't, I hear you saying it. There is on-device queries. Yes, it can pull up a system setting or set a reminder and stuff like that. But especially stuff like requesting music or different things, it's going to the cloud, right? Why would Apple have two versions of Siri in the cloud? Why? That doesn't make any sense. So let's wait and see. But I'm willing to bet that the quote-unquote upgraded new Siri that can understand nuance and pick up where it left off, that kind of stuff, is all possible on every device that has Siri, because that Apple doesn't have two Siris. They have one Siri, and I don't understand why people would think that they're going to fork literally their assistant. It would be terrible for it would make people very upset, as it has, because they've already decided to be upset about something that hasn't happened yet. So what do you think, William? Is Apple going to segment Siri this way? Are they going to have multiple different intelligent levels across devices?
I would be with you, except we do know we're not going to get Apple Intelligence in Europe, so there's a segmentation there. And also, right. I would be sympathetic to the complexity of Siri parsing natural language speech, because it is an astounding thing when it works. It's just, if you ask Siri for something and it gets it wrong, and you ask it again and it gets it wrong in a completely different way, there's something else there. It is not
There's something wrong.
Being passed the same way. Yes. I mean, I admit, after a while, your tone of voice changes, and you might say please or other words at a different end of the spectrum there. So then I would understand passing being different. But,
I have a little bit more hope than most people on this, because I've always been a Siri unicorn. It's just worked for me. And I expect it to work better. Now, I know that my accent isn't very thick, and I don't have any, specific dialect problems, and I'm not speaking a second language. I understand why, I don't have any speaking disabilities or anything like that. Like, I understand why Siri works well for me, but at the same time, I can't see the strategy being, let's make it bad. Let's have a worse Siri for some people. And again, I know people would say, oh, that's just motivation to buy the new product. Well, you can't buy a better HomePod, right? And HomePod is where Siri lives. Now, here's the other side of this discussion. When Apple pitched HomePod, we forget this because it was so long ago, but it is your music assistant, right? And anything personal gets called out to the iPhone. And guess what is on your iPhone is Apple Intelligence. So through proxy, it will have access to a lot of that information and a lot of that styling. Maybe certain requests can be passed to the iPhone or iPad or Mac in your home to get processed, or this private cloud compute could be a part of it. I just don't see how Apple would fragment their smart assistant in that way. It doesn't make sense. And then the stuff it needs to be better at, like language understanding and stuff, those models can just be improved, shrunk down, and made to where it, like, you have to understand, the models we're talking about on iPhone are very complex, large models. They need at least 8 gigs of RAM on an iPhone, 16 gigs of RAM on a Mac to run properly. You need to have certain things in place, like the size of the neural engine to run image generation and text recognition and all of that. But we're talking about a voice model. And there's already voice recognition models on iPad. Just, they're much smaller. They're much more nimble. Maybe, theoretically, you could take the stuff we've learned with AI and put that into the model on HomePod, and even with the chipset that it has, and get away with it understanding language better, understanding people better. We'll find out once we get HomePod operating system 18 installed. Maybe later this summer, maybe not till the fall. But I'm interested in seeing exactly how this all plays out. But all I wanted to say on the podcast is, don't lose hope yet. It's not like Apple's abandoning the HomePod or anything. But it's still just a music player that happens to be able to set a reminder or a timer, right? Right. Let's see what they do in the future. It's not getting Apple Intelligence because it doesn't make sense to put literal Apple Intelligence on the HomePod, because what is it going to do with that on a HomePod? It doesn't have a screen. So much of Apple Intelligence is visual, but I think Siri will get smarter on the HomePod.
What I'd like to just point out is that we began this hour with you calling me hundreds of years old, and you've ended it by saying Siri won't listen to me because I have an English accent. Well,
That's
fine.
not what I said.
Fine. No, it's too late now. Okay.
One of the series you can do has an English accent. By the way, which voice do you use?
Oh, that is a funny thing. Because Siri didn't come out here for, I want to say 6 months after it did in the States, because I'd heard all the ads and I'd read all these things. To me, Siri was a woman's voice the way it defaults in America. In Britain, the default is a male voice, and it always sounds to me like he's sneering and he's impersonating Siri. He's not the real Siri. So I switch it to British female. My wife has... it's just like an Irish accent. Is it French or Irish? I can't remember. But it just so we have a distinction between the voices. And I really rather like driving along with Angela's version of Siri telling me to turn left in a bit. It'll be fine. Yes,
if you could make it sound like Morgan Freeman or something, would you do that?
I'd go for Brian Blessed, who might not be a name you know, but Google him for the most incredible and frankly loud voice imaginable.
One last little tidbit before we close out. I did have a possible discussion point if we ran out of things, but of course, it's William and I. We can talk about anything for hours. So we filled the show just fine. But I did have one last little thing I wanted to point out. Something I've noticed. So much of the iPhone these days is photography. And so much of the keynote is dedicated to the cameras and the computational photography that's been really present in iPhone since at least the iPhone 6. And it's just evolved and evolved and grown and grown. And here we are today. We have this massive library of photos. Most iPhones sold now have some sort of depth data from multiple cameras or even LiDAR. So we have all of these images with just depth maps and portraitures and all of these things. And Apple has done something interesting. And I've noticed a bit of a pattern. I don't know if you've noticed, William, where every operating system is taking advantage of this extra data and photos to do something very interesting. Have you seen this?
Not one single clue what this could be. What's been getting past me?
So watch faces, right? They're now analyzing your entire photo library and deciding which photos you have of people, pets, locations, and objects serve best as watch faces. And they're using that depth data to move the image. It's doing it all for you. You don't have to crop a square, right, and put it into the watch face. It's literally saying this part of the image is perfect for a watch face. It's going to sit in this corner. The time is going to be in this corner. And now we have the, portrait photo watch face. I've had it on. It's so good. Like, it's just so intelligent at finding just the right image every single time, positioning the clock perfectly. I think this is going to be huge for watchOS. Everyone's going to be using this face. If you have the betas and you haven't tried it yet, go check it out. It's really nice. But that's not even scratching the surface. Apple TV screensavers, right? You're going to be able to set your the same kinds of photos, the ones with all this data, to be the perfect screensaver on the Apple TV with a clock on it and different various gradient backgrounds or colorways. Apple's going to be doing a lot of intelligence here to create these stunning screensavers based on your own photo library. And I feel like this is going to be really interesting because I've had the automatic switching photo shuffle on my iPhone and iPad for my personal focus. And it does such a good job just finding images constantly, every hour showing a new one, perfectly placed on the lock screen with the time in the background. It's just so well done that this is coming to Apple TV. And again, just being so well executed. It's not available yet. It's forever buffering on the beta right now. So I'm excited to see what it does with my library. But from what I understand, it looks like it's going to be awesome. And then, of course, the final bit is Apple Vision Pro being able to take advantage of all this information and transforming regular everyday photos into these 3D masterpieces that you can look into that were never meant to have depth, but now do. Multiple layers of depth in some images, which is really interesting. So what do you think of this side of Apple's computational photography? It's not replacing a moon or, making you more beautiful. It's just taking the world that you have, all this data from these photos, from this information, from this moment, and just giving it that much more for you to experience.
So first I'm old, then I'm too English for Siri. Now I can't be made more beautiful. Give up. Okay, this is not going well. But I have 55,000 photographs on my iPhone, and I don't understand how I got that many or where they're all backed up. And I worry about it occasionally, but I don't think enough about this. And I don't have an Apple Vision Pro, so I was aware of the 2D to 3D thing, but I wasn't expecting to see it. Now, of course, we're days away from it coming out, Vision Pro being out here in the UK. Maybe I will see it. Maybe I won't. I have a tax bill coming first, but there we go. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna add to your homework assignment, because I gave you homework a couple weeks ago. So I'm gonna
and I have been doing it religiously. Whatever it was, definitely I did it. Yes, okay. So my dog did eat something. Sorry, there you go.
Oh, of course. Your dog ate your iPhone.
Yeah, haven't got a dog, but metaphorically. Anyway, yes, you're going to give me more homework. Yes.
So I asked you to build a new focus mode, just something that'll trigger maybe during your personal time to help avoid those do not disturb issues that you're having before. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, now let's go ahead. If you ever do this, build you a personal focus mode that runs during your not working hours, but make your lock screen the photo shuffle lock screen. Pick, your wife or any pets you have. I don't know if you have kids or grandkids or anything, but pick the people in your life that are important, and then say pets, locations, turn on all the toggles, go into the people section, turn off the people you don't want to see, turn on the people you want to see, and then say go, and just leave it alone and have that run as your lock screen in your personal focus that runs when you're not at work. And if you set this up, I'm willing to bet you'll be very surprised at the images it surfaces for those lock screens.
Right. I don't tend to do personal time. I have a work balance. But I'm intrigued. I'll give you that. I will look into it. I pinky promise I will do that.
Yeah. If you don't, at the bare minimum, if you don't do that, add a photo widget somewhere. Don't ruin your home screen, right? You have a home screen probably already beautifully set up. It's probably just the default layout and with no widgets. Swipe left to that silly today view, delete whatever's there, and just put the giant photo widget there. And just scroll over and look at that every now and then. If you don't do the lock screen thing, do that, because even that photo widget just surfaces some really amazing photos sometimes.
We'll see. Okay. Right.
Well, I think that's our show this week. We've managed to make it through the quiet week with quite a lot to discuss. I'd love to hear anything you thought of this episode or other things that we've discussed on previous episodes. Please reach out. We've got some amazing emails lately, questions about troubleshooting certain issues people have had. I've seen some awesome comments about the show, people thanking us for the job we're doing and everything. And I really appreciate those messages. They really help us keep going here. We've seen some really good reviews. We take those reviews into account, so keep leaving them. We love the 5-star ones, but hey, you can't have the good without the bad. There's always going to be a couple people who have something mean or sad to say, and we will take it into account and see if we can't improve the show. We're always trying to be better for you guys, the listeners. That's what we're here for. We're not talking to ourselves. So go out there, find me on Mastodon, leave me a message, or send an email. You can find mine and William's email at the top of any article we've written or in the show notes. William, is there anywhere else people can find you?
Actually, well, yes, I kind of lurk in corners, but email is the way. I've been saying that for the last few weeks now, and I've realised just more and more, because I get loads of emails because of it. It is it's my home email is, so that's where you will find me. I love that.
And I'd like to thank our sponsors once again, Notion and Fastmail, for sponsoring this episode. And if you guys are an ad-free listener with Apple Insider Plus, stay tuned. We will be getting into some more Apple discussion around Apple, the doomed company, but also somehow not. We'll talk to you about that soon. And for everyone else, we'll talk next week.